Hey everyone, it's Jeff, and continuing my playoff previews. Today, I'm doing the Phoenix Suns, and this is a team who, the more I learn about and the more I watch and the more I research, the more I'm actually optimistic about their playoff chances. I honestly believe that they have the upside and the players and talent to win the championship this year. And that doesn't mean I think they're going to win the championship, but if everything goes right, I think they've got as good of a shot as anybody. Let's start with the upside here, and in my opinion, I think Mikal Bridges is the X factor here because I think Bridges is the guy who has the most room to just kind of explode in the playoffs, right? Like he has the ability to play like a star, but so far in the regular season, he's been playing like a role player pretty much, which is good. 13 points per game. He's been ridiculously efficient just in terms of raw shooting numbers, 53% from field, 40% from three. But in the games where Mikal Bridges is popping off, the Phoenix Suns are truly unstoppable. And here's the fun fact. In games where Mikal Bridges has scored over 18 points, the Suns are 15-2. He's kind of like the ultimate finisher, where he's not necessarily creating shots for himself. It's just more like because he's so athletic and because he's such a good shooter, right? He's finishing plays that are created by, Chris Paul or Devin Booker. And I think tonight is a very great example of that, where aside from a defense, which I'll get to in a moment, but against Cleveland, Mikal Bridges completely dominated them in the overtime period. He was sprinting into open threes, he was cutting towards the basket, and, whoever's guarding him just couldn't keep up. Bridges is definitely Phoenix's X factor. And, if Devin Booker is playing like his usual self, Chris Paul is doing his thing, and DeAndre Ayton is also playing like his usual self, I don't care if it's against Milwaukee, either LA team, Brooklyn. If Mikal Bridges is out there just hitting threes and, dunking everything in transition, I think Phoenix can beat anybody. And I'm going to extrapolate Mikal Bridges' upside to the Phoenix Suns in general on defense, because I also think that the Suns' defensive upside is also among the best in the league, where we saw last year the Lakers, right? Their defense just turned up another level in the playoffs. And I think that was especially on display against the Rockets, where their communication, just their chemistry on defense was flawless. They were making just very little mistakes. Everyone was putting forth energy and effort. I think the Suns have that same potential too. And especially tonight against Cleveland again. I know it's against the Cavs, so it's not exactly the best team to compare against, but I think you can, extrapolate defensive energy and communication pretty well across any team you're playing, no matter how good they are. And once again, I'm going to hone in on Bridges because he was a catalyst. Because he was out there looking like Kawhi Leonard, where he was swatting shots, he was just completely suffocating and stifling people. Chetty Osman and Sexton kept trying to drive on Bridges, and Bridges just kept walling them off and basically making their lives very, very difficult. Bridges legitimately has, all NBA first team potential on defense, and he's been great on defense this year. But my point is, the way he played today showed that he can take his defense up to another level even. And if he brings that intensity and A game to the playoffs, I would be comfortable putting Bridges on LeBron James or Kawhi. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to lock them up because they're still going to score. But my point is, he's one of the best options to do that just because he has such great length in terms of just being able to bother people. He's super disciplined on defense too, where he just moves his feet really well. And he has nice fluid hips where he can change direction and just kind of rotate with whoever he's guarding. That's the upside Mikal Bridges gives you. And that's why he's one of the biggest X factors this entire postseason, in my opinion. I also want to shout out Cam Johnson, who it's just so rare for a team to have 2 3-and-D wings who are as good as Johnson and Mikal Bridges. But here we are, and they're both just phenomenal. I don't think Johnson is quite as good on defense as Bridges, but he's just as disciplined, and he's just as good of a team player on defense where he's always communicating, he switches perfectly and flawlessly. Both Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are glue guys. These two type of players are the players who are the foundation of your defense, and Phoenix has 2 of them. Even Devin Booker, who we all know historically has not been a great defender, I think has shown massive defensive improvements this year, where before, just whenever Booker was off ball, I think last year also he was better, but 2 years before, back in 2019, right? Whenever Booker was off ball, he just was not paying attention. He was on autopilot pretty much. But when Booker is focused and locked in, he can be a positive, factor for your defense. And I think because Phoenix has, Chris Paul to help take off some of the offensive pressure from Booker, we can expect him to be that focused and locked in the playoffs and actually be a positive contributing member to his team's defense. Like I said, I thought the Suns' rotations on defense were just flawless. I haven't watched a game in a while, but the game I did watch tonight, especially in overtime, the way they were just moving and rotating and pretty much just like stopping Cleveland at whatever juncture they wanted to go at, the Cavs like literally could not get off a good quality shot for the first like 4 minutes of overtime. I kid you not. And I can totally see Phoenix doing that to a team like Denver too. You know, because Denver, they use a lot of off-ball motion, a lot of screens off-ball too, to try and get guys open. And I think Phoenix has the potential and ability to just shut that down and just force Jokic to just make a ton of tough Jokic shots, which granted, Jokic can definitely still do, but it would make life a lot more difficult for Denver. I think, you know, Monty Williams deserves a ton of credit for just, it's not even that he changed the system of this team, because definitely they're playing smarter basketball, right? But it's just, I don't think it's just Chris Paul either, because we saw in a bubble last year, Phoenix was playing with an energy and level of intensity that they haven't played with for the last 5 years. I think Monty Williams is just a fantastic locker room presence who's very great at just galvanizing his team. And you can tell because, like, once again, I'm going to use tonight's game just because I don't remember any Suns games recently besides this one. The Suns came out in overtime and they were just hammering away at Cleveland. And you can just tell Monty Williams gave his team a nice, you know, invigorating, exciting pep talk. Anyways, I also like Phoenix's offensive system. There's a lot of teams that have a lot of like handoffs and ball movement, right? But it's not movement that gets players going towards the basket. I think the Pelicans are a perfect example of that, where they have a ton of like handoffs at the top of the key, but it's like lateral movement where it's Brandon Ingram going from like one elbow to the other elbow, or from like one wing to the other wing, right? It's not Ingram going towards the basket because that's not how the play is designed. And it's flawed long term because, you know, you're not really going anywhere with that besides taking fadeaway pull-up jumpers from like 17 feet out. And I love that Phoenix has a lot of off-ball motion and screens, but it's screens that gets people freed up and cutting towards the basket, rather than just, you know, flare screens to the elbow or like pin downs to the top of the key. In my opinion, the driver of any good NBA offense, or just any basketball offense in general, is just motion that gets players going towards the basket with momentum. If you put the ball in the hands of a playmaker who's going downhill, you're going to get great results. That's pretty much literally the philosophy behind LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo's offensive systems. And Phoenix, they don't have a big athletic playmaker like those two guys, but they do have two guys in Chris Paul and Devin Booker, who are elite, just mid-range pull-up shooters. And the reason why to this day Chris Paul is so good is, like, one, he's obviously really skilled, right? But it's because like teams are just used to giving up the most inefficient shot in basketball, right? Like, if you put a big in a pick and roll against a quicker guard, he's going to drop back slightly and he's going to make sure you don't get the three-pointer, but he's also going to drop back in the paint because he doesn't want you to get an easy layup either. That center is trying to prevent the three ball and a layup, right? The two most efficient shots in basketball. But when you do that, you do give up the mid-range shot usually for bigs who are not like, you know, freakishly athletic like Bam Adebayo or Anthony Davis. And that's where Chris Paul just makes a killing because that's his favorite spot on the court. And he's so good at shooting those shots that he makes it efficient because of how good he is. NBA centers today, when they play Chris Paul, it goes against everything that's been drilled into them since they've entered the NBA. Now, it should be mentioned that if you do have a team that has just great defensive chemistry, like the Lakers or the Miami Heat from last year, or potentially the Suns from this year, they can give an offense like Phoenix some trouble, where maybe Phoenix just can't generate the same, you know, easy open shots that they're used to getting because the other team is just on point. But the great thing about the Suns is they have Chris Paul and they have Devin Booker, who are these two players who can just say, you know, like, screw you, I'll still make these uber contested, two hands in my face type shots. Like, Devin Booker right now is probably one of the best players in the league at just making contested shots. Devin Booker's skill set is pretty much tailored for the playoffs, where sometimes no matter how much scouting you do, how much game planning you do, he'll just wreck your game plan by just making those bad shots that you're trying to give him. And once again, Mikal Bridges adds another level of kind of unpredictability to this team's offense, where if he's just, you know, feeling it and he's in rhythm, he can take Phoenix's offense to another level. Same with DeAndre Ayton, of course, too. The Suns haven't really needed him to do this so far, but he has the ability to just dominate a game physically inside the paint. That dude has like one of the best physiques in terms of size and strength and athleticism out of anybody in the NBA, and he's also skilled as hell around the basket. So my point is, I think Phoenix has a very high floor just given the chemistry and how much talent they have, but they also have a lot of swing factors that can potentially push him to another level even. As for specific matchups, I think against Denver, I think Ayton is going to struggle against Jokic. Even though Ayton has improved his defense, Jokic is just impossible to guard at this point. But I don't know if Denver has the defense to keep up with Phoenix. Phoenix just might be too well balanced for Denver to handle, if you understand my point. But then again, Jokic is so immensely talented, it might not matter, and Denver still might be able to pull it out. And Michael Porter Jr. is also the wildest of X factors out there too. I think Phoenix beats Denver if MPJ doesn't go crazy and he's averaging like 20 points per game instead of 27, and Jokic just doesn't have enough help to overcome a more balanced Phoenix attack on both offense and defense. I also seriously think that Phoenix can beat the Clippers if Bridges is just giving Paul George and Kawhi a really tough time like he has ability to. I do think the Clippers defense will be very difficult for Phoenix to handle just because, it's Kawhi and PG. Plus, Beverly and Rondo are just going to harass the hell out of CP3 and Devin Booker. I would absolutely love to see this happen, this playoff matchup. And while if I think about this just using purely my head, I would pick the Clippers. But I think following my instincts too, I would say it's a lot more of a coin toss. For the Lakers, it really depends on how healthy AD and LeBron are. If both of those guys are healthy, I just think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. And you have to give it to LA just because of that. The Jazz are interesting too. We'll have to see just how healthy Donovan Mitchell is too, if they play each other. And if they play each other, it's going to be like in the conference finals. So I kind of doubt that these two teams meet in the conference finals just because that means both the Lakers, Clippers, and the Nuggets are out. So, but yeah, I also like Phoenix's odds against Utah too. I think Utah's offense will seriously struggle against Phoenix's defense just because I don't know if Utah will have enough creators to offset Mikal Bridges and Johnson and Chris Paul and Ayton when he's playing good and Booker when he's locked in too. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I'll probably do the Milwaukee Bucks next, and I'll see you for that one.